Smells like burnt popcorn. Yes, it does.
Hello.
Hi there, Thomas. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Well, it's a Monday. There we
Yeah.
go. For a Monday, not bad. Not
Yeah.
bad at all. Did you have a good weekend?
Uh, Today starts my weekend, so but yeah, it was a good weekend.
Oh, from your other job, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. What do you do on the other job?
Um, uh, I unload freight for trucks and then I stock that freight to the store shelves.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Listen, that's work is work.
Yeah.
Let's do our work. I don't know who's going to be on here beside you, so we'll wait a minute or two here, just another minute, and see who else is going to be on. Otherwise, it'll be another private class for you.
Yeah.
Have you scheduled your test again?
Yeah, I retake it tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, let's get you going here, guy.
Yeah.
All right, let me go and see if I can share the screen here. Hang on. Oh, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong screen here. So just a second.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. So let's open it up. And here we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure that other thing comes down. All righty, so what we're gonna start with is the dates and deadlines. That's what this contract is. We won't hold another one, just so you know, Thomas, until after the new year, which I think is January 9th. But when you pass your test, and if you're going to write an offer or something, you can always call me, okay?
Okay.
So what we have is time of deadline, time of day deadline. That means that other than acceptance at the bottom and a closing, you have deadlines for all the other things that are need to be received in a contract. You want them, so it defaults to 11:59. However, your best bet is to do somewhere between 6 and 8 because you don't want to go too late into the night. It doesn't work very well. Alternative earnest money deadline is the deadline that you're going to give a buyer. The buyer has to have his earnest money into the agency or title company. So you want to make that a 3 to 5 day period of time. Like over the weekend, you make it 5 because it's too difficult. Nobody's open over in a weekend. But if you're during the week, you usually try to do 2 to 3, usually 3 to 4 days, something like that. So 3 to 5 is a good example.
Okay.
Your record, title, deadline, and tax certificate. This is when the listing agent is going to give you, the selling agent and the buyer, their information on the title and the tax certificate. And that I would put out somewhere about a week and a half to 2 weeks after your acceptance date. That way they have plenty of time to get it back to you. The only time of the year you're going to have a little bit of a struggle getting the tax certificate is usually in January, because that's when all of the assessments change. Record title objection is your buyer that has to say, hey, I don't like that vacant lot behind here. I need to go research it, or I don't like the air traffic over my house, or whatever the case may be. They can research that and they can get out of the contract. So you're off. I'm sorry, record title objection means I object to the title and the tax certificate. Off record means I don't like what's behind my house, it's vacant lot, or the planes are coming over my house or whatever, and they actually can get out of that on an objection. Then if you have a title objection, then you want to resolve it by a day. So you want to give yourself somewhere between, I would say 3 to 5 days to resolve it. So you receive it on the 14th, and 6 days later, if you have an objection, you have that on the 18th, and 2 days later, you can resolve. If you don't resolve, the contract terminates. We don't use for third-party approval. On the association documents, that is the responsibility of the listing agent to give to the selling agent and the buyer, and to make sure that they read it and know it's there. Your buyer needs to read it and understand they can't paint their house Bronco orange. I don't know why anybody would do that right now anyway, but somebody might, or pink or whatever. Have to adhere to whatever it is that the rules are there. And if they object, then they can terminate the contract. The seller's property disclosure date is somewhere about anywhere from 2 to 3 days after your acceptance. And that's the responsibility of the listing agent to get that property disclosure to you. Lead-based paint disclosure is I put on the same day, because within 2 to 3 days, they should be able to get you both these documents. Then we go down to new loan application deadline. That means your buyer should have already gone and got everything hopefully already in. The last piece to their application is the legal description and address of a property. You have not completed your application until it has been done. So you want to put that next day after your acceptance date. Then your new loan termination deadline is somewhere around a week to a week and a half after acceptance date. This is where the lender tells the buyer, hey, here are your terms and conditions. Are you okay with that? Because once you go past this deadline, buyers aren't going to get their earnest money back in most cases. New loan availability deadline means, hey, listen, the loan that you agreed to that before the 18th in this case is now still available and you have to close. If you don't close because of one circumstance or another, you probably will not get your earnest money back. So items, let's see, 16 through 21, we do not use. Once in a great while, it may be used for either an assumption or financing, assuming a financing or something, or private. We don't usually normally use those. So you want to be sure you don't have any NAs in there and you go on to the next level. Now we tie in our appraisal deadline a week and a half to 2 weeks prior to closing. This means that the appraisal has to be done and it's turned into the lender. Now, if there's something, everybody agrees to a price and the appraisal doesn't come in on that price, then what happens is that you have to object and send the other party a copy of that appraisal. If you can't resolve it, the contract will terminate. Okay. Now you have a survey. I tie my survey deadlines real close to my appraisal. Again, it's usually a week and a half prior to the deadline for closing. So you don't put in any dates in here if you have a high-rise condo or a townhome. You usually put this in if there is a lot and block or acreage. So make sure you put your dates in. You can even put them the same time as your appraisal dates and your objection date and your resolve. This is not used very much anymore because it's only once in a great while somebody will use it. And but put them in. If the dates go by, the dates go by, and it does no harm, no foul. So water right examination is if your property is on acreage and you have a well and there may or may not be water rights to go with it. But if there are, you have to make sure you can put a date in here for the attorney to examine the water rights and the mineral rights. Now, here's the issue. You can't have a fast closing if you have mineral and water rights that are going to be involved because they're 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks out. So the closing would be a lot farther and our dates would not be super close on this. Or you could check the little box that says they're not going to examine any water rights or mineral rights in those 2 paragraphs. Now we have a termination deadline. That deadline says, hey, listen, I'm going to have an inspection, but I may or may not accept that inspection. If I don't, I'm going to terminate. So you put your termination deadline and your objection deadline are the same. You either give the buyer or the seller one or the other. You don't give them both. So if you have an inspection and you want to make an objection, great, you do it by this certain date. Once you have your inspection, usually between a week to 2 weeks after acceptance deadline. So if you give them the seller an objection deadline, then your inspection resolution deadline is the deadline that the buyer and the seller have to agree to whatever was objected to initially. Now you have property inspection, property insurance termination deadline. This is something once you go under contract, you want to make sure you want to tie it to the termination of your inspection. You want to be sure that this termination deadline, that they have checked with their insurance and they're okay, that they can live with whatever that payment is. Because in some cases, some houses are in floodplains that people don't know about. Now, due diligence delivery is something in paragraph 10. If it deals with solar panels or water softeners or let's see, our alarm systems and things like that. So you want to see documentation. I either accept it or I don't. I object to it. And if you can't resolve, and most of this usually falls under a solar panel situation, then the contract will terminate. on 10, item 37 is conditional sale. This says to the seller, hey, Mr. Seller, we have a house under contract. We're due to close it on X date. And we would like for you to accept our contingency. So the date you put in here is the date you're supposed to close on that contingency. Then you go to additional provisions and put in reference paragraph 10 that the house under 123 Main Street is under contract. We have completed inspections, appraisals, and just waiting to close. So that would be a good offer to accept. Your lead-based paint termination deadline is a couple of days after you receive your lead-based paint disclosure from the listing agent. You don't want to have a lot of time in between this. You want to be sure that you've got you get it done quickly and all parties sign. Otherwise, it's an $18,000 fine. Now you've set your closing date, you've set your possession date. I always put a time. I never put down after delivery of deed or anything like that. You can always change it at closing. It's not a big deal. And you put your acceptance date, whatever that may be. You've had a conversation with the selling agent, and when can you get a hold of the seller and when can you make a decision? So then you put a time in there also. Do you have any questions, Thomas?
I did have one question.
Sure.
Why for the ones that are, I guess, that don't use for the contract, like the third party right to purchase and approval, why do we leave it blank instead of putting NA?
Well, you don't want to put NAs because it deletes the whole every place
Okay.
it deletes the whole paragraph.
Okay.
Third parties are usually used in condos. And that usually means that's usually in the high country. It's not down here. It's in Vail, it's in Edmond and Frisco and whatever. There are bylaws by certain condo that they go out to the populace in their condos to find out if somebody wants to buy it before it goes out to the open market. It's very rarely used here in the city. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that was it.
Well, there we go. You're it today. That was the end of your year. Have a great Christmas. And please pass that test tomorrow, Thomas.
Yeah.
I want to see you in here next week.
Okay.
Okay, good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.